Hi, everybody. My name is Jordan Hawker, and I'm going to be talking about how to fast track your Ember development. First, I just kind of want to get an idea of where people are at in terms of their Ember experience. Could I get a show of hands of people who've been working with Ember for less than 6 months? Okay. How many people are working on an Ember app that is in production today? Okay. How many people have been involved in the creation of an Ember app from the ground up? Awesome. So we've got a good mix of experience. So I'm sure at this point most of you know about Ember CLI. So I'm not going to really go into a lot of detail, but essentially it's the command line utility that is official for Ember development. It primarily how it purports to my talk is that Ember provides a default blueprint for generating a new app. And that basically gives you everything you need to create a fully functional Ember app. And within a couple of steps, you can basically have an app that is deployable to production. What I've done sort of beyond that is, in my Ember experience, I've realized that what Ember CLI gives you to start with is sort of the bare minimum, but there's a lot more that you need to really have a great, ambitious application. And the Ember add-on ecosystem provides you a lot of great functionality that you can use to really kickstart your application. However, there are about 1,500 add-ons out there today. And so when I went through and started a new Ember app maybe about a month or two ago, I found that it was a lot of work to go through and find which add-ons were actually going to be helpful to me and which add-ons were up to date with the latest versions of Ember that I was using and which add-ons were actually being maintained and were mature and functional. And so what I did is I kind of went through and found what I considered to be the essential add-ons that pretty much any application is going to need. And I built an add-on that will install them for you. I've called this add-on Ember CLI Opinionated. And the reason I chose this name is that basically this add-on makes a number of decisions for you that you may make differently. But Ember itself is an opinionated framework, and so in my mind, these are decisions that need to be made. And if you, as a developer, have a strong difference of opinion with the choices that I've made, then obviously you can go and find other great add-ons to do what you need to do. But my focus here is to basically give you a base set of the common decisions that you need to make for every single Ember application and sort of provide you with the base requirements to really create a great high-quality application. So briefly, I want to show you guys what it looks like to actually install this. I know you guys probably can't see this very well, but I'm going to attempt to actually install my add-on. We'll see if it works on Wi-Fi. All right, so you can see kind of right away it's installing a bunch of stuff. Now we've kind of hit a questionnaire, so I'm going to assume that you guys probably can't read this very well, so I'm just going to read it out. So the first thing that's asked is basically, would you like to enhance your setup? So it's already done some work for you. It's already chosen sort of a base set of add-ons that you will need. And now you're sort of given the option to optionally add even more add-ons. So I'm going to go ahead and select yes. And so now it's asking what extra features your app needs. So in this case, are you organizing your app into pods, which is sort of the future way that apps are going to be organized, but isn't quite finalized yet. So not everyone's using it. It's not the default. If you were to say yes, then you'd get an add-on Ember CLI SaaS pods that lets you put styles in pods. I'm going to go ahead and say no for now. Next part is analytics and reporting. Are you going to be doing charting? So if you're going to be doing charting, my recommended add-on is Ember E3, which is an Ember first charting library. We'll go ahead and say yes. Then I've got a collection of testing add-ons that are recommended, such as Mirage, Synon, Ember Try, So we'll go ahead and grab those. There's a great add-on for mobile touch called Ember Gestures. There's maybe you're doing material design. You know, a lot of people use Bootstrap, or they'll use Bourbon, or they'll use material design. In my case, material design is sort of my current flavor of the month that I'm a fan of. So I've found a very ambitious but also very usable add-on called Ember Paper that provides material design for you. And then for animations, there's Liquid Fire, which I'm sure many of you have already heard of. It was talked a lot about at EmberConf this year and is one of the biggest add-ons out there right now. So at this point, it's actually going to attempt to install everything, but so that we don't have to wait on NPM, I've actually done that for you already so that we can actually get into looking at some stuff. So going back here briefly, one of the add-ons I wanted to talk about is called EmberSF. So EmberSF is built by the folks over at Dockyard, and it's a JavaScript code style linter, and it has a ES6 aware style guide, which is customizable, but the default style guide is basically what the Dockyard team recommends for good style in ES6 in Ember apps. They have some very sensible defaults, but obviously you can pick whatever your team needs. I highly recommend this as a way to make sure that your JavaScript code style is up to date and consistent. And this is sort of JSCS is what has come out of JS Hint, which some of you have probably been familiar with because it ships with Ember apps by default. JS Hint is focusing primarily on patterns in JavaScript that cause bugs moving forward, and JSCS is kind of the splinter project that focuses on code style. So definitely check that out. Another one that I want to talk about is Ember CLI SaaS. So with some exceptions, writing CSS itself is not fun, especially when you're building a very ambitious application. Trying to write maintainable CSS is somewhat of a nightmare. So preprocessors such as Less or Sass give you the ability to write sort of more powerful maintainable styles. And Ember CLI Sass is an add-on that basically integrates Sass into your project. Ember CLI Auto Prefixer is my other favorite style add-on. Auto Prefixer is a project that allows you to automatically add vendor prefixes to your CSS so that you no longer have to write vendor prefixes yourself. In fact, this tool is recommended by Google as the recommended way to handle browser differences in CSS. You should not be writing any of your own vendor prefixes. You should be using a post-CSS processor to add the vendor prefixes for you. And the cool thing about this project is you can configure it to support certain sets of browsers. You could say like the last 2 most current browser releases across all browsers, or you could give it a more explicit list. And it will actually detect, based off the set of browsers that you want to support, which vendor prefixes are actually necessary. Because even if you go back a year or 2 years, the number of vendor prefixes that you had to use to get stuff to work was a lot larger then than it is now. So there are a lot of vendor prefixes that you might be surprised are not actually needed because today's browsers have a lot better support for the actual CSS standards. So Ember CLI Auto Prefixer basically takes care of that for you, and I want to demonstrate that here. So I have just a base Ember app that I've installed Ember CLI Opinionated on, so it has all of these add-ons here. And I'm going to go into my styles and just do something here. And then let's create another file here. Let's do a placeholder. And then let's add something here to flip it around. So let's do like a transform that flips stuff upside down because it's fun to flip things upside down. So let's go here. Yeah, hold on. It was increased earlier. Is that better? All right. So, and then we'll extend this. Or, whoops. Extend. Flip Y. So now, if we go to the browser, we should see something happen, except I broke it. Of course. What did I do? Placeholders. Placeholders. The perils of live coding, folks. Well, I'm not sure why that's not working, but the placeholder is not the point of this, so we'll just do this the easy way. See if that works. Great, so you can see here that the H2 is blue and it got flipped upside down. The cool part here is that if we actually inspect it, this here is 3 different transforms, 2 of which have their vendor prefixes added. Obviously, you can see that I only wrote just a regular CSS transform, but auto prefixer went ahead and added the 2 that I needed just automatically. So another one that I really, really enjoy is called Ember Responsive. Ember Responsive basically injects media queries into your Ember application so that you can access it from anywhere that you want, a route, a controller, a component. You can even access it in your templates because it is injected into all of those objects. So it ships with some default breakpoints that you can use just like you would use media queries in your styles. And then you can do different layouts based off those queries. So let me pull something up here. So let's do, so you have this media object that's available everywhere. And let's say is desktop. I think by default you get is mobile, is tablet, is desktop, and is jumbo, I think. So let's do that, and then cool. So now if we go back and look at this, hopefully. All right, so right now we're looking at it in desktop mode. Let me increase that a little bit. So as I resize, you can see that it's basically catching the size of the screen and updating the text as you would expect from your normal templating, primarily because this is desktop is changing from true to false as we resize the screen. It's pretty simple, but it's very, very powerful when you're doing something that needs to work on multiple devices. So Ember Moment is another favorite of mine. Pretty much every application has to deal with date parsing in some way, whether you're displaying dates or doing some sort of date manipulation or, God forbid, like actual like adding and subtracting of dates and comparisons on the browser, because we all know that's horrible. But Ember Moment gives you Moment.js, which is a pretty popular, well-known date parsing library, as an ES6 module, and it also provides a number of template helpers and computed property macros that you can use in your Ember applications. So let me come in here, and I'm going to just build us a component to play around with here. So we'll have a date stuff component, because that's good naming practices. Right. So, zoom that in for you. So we can import moment from moment, which is pretty nice because we don't have to deal with globals anymore. And then we'll just define some moments here. Today, later. All right, and then in here, let's say, hey, today is, so moment format is your standard component for displaying a date. And it has a lot of options where you can configure how it's displayed, but we'll just take the default. And this is a fun one I like. Moment from now. We'll actually do a completely different thing, which I'll show you in just a sec. Later. Date stuff. So let's grab that. Make that a little bit easier for you guys to read. So you can see that it gives you the full date of the moment that it generated. And then moment from now is nice because it will actually tell you sort of a countdown based off some date that you've defined. And it will pick the most appropriate unit to display that in. So if the date was like a couple days from now, it'll say in like 3 days, or it'll say in like 4 hours or in 15 minutes. I think it even comes down to seconds as well. So it's very useful, a lot of different applications you can use for that. Let's see here. So EmberCPM used to be pretty popular add-on, maybe not as well known now because it sort of lagged behind in Ember 2.x compatibility, but I worked with the author a lot in the last month, and we managed to get it compatible with Ember 2.0. So definitely recommend checking this out again. It's an add-on that gives you a lot of additional computed property macros that Ember itself doesn't provide. And on top of that, it provides composable macros, which allow you to basically use macros within macros and sort of have a macroception going on. Another great library I just wanted to call out here is Ember Macaroni, which just came out recently. It also has a different set of macros that you can use that there's not really overlap between the two, so you could use them together. They're both really great add-ons. But for today, I want to sort of show how Ember CPM works. So let's give ourselves an Ember CPM stuff component. Right. So I'm gonna just put a bunch of semi-gibberish stuff in here once I get this set up. So if you're not familiar with ES6 syntax, this might look weird, or I'll just hide everything from you guys so you can't see what I'm doing. Yeah. Yep. Sorry. Thanks you. All right. Basically just grabbing some of the variables that I'm going to need from it so that I don't have to reference them via the longer syntax. So let's just add a number, add another number, and then -2. So one thing you can do is you can say, let's sum num1 and num2. And this can even take arrays, and it'll sum the arrays as well, which is kind of awesome. So let's do a diff1 here, difference num2, num3. And then let's say maybe we want to do a product that is the product of diff1 and num4. And then let's say we want to get a total out where we can do sum of sum1 and prod1. All right, so now we can go into our template and we'll just yield out this total because that's all that we really want in the end. And then we'll put this in here. Stuff. It's probably going to look. Oh, apparently I can't type. Let's try that. So it'll also concatenate strings, apparently. So basically, I just did a lot of stuff to output some random useless number, but hopefully you can start to see the utility of being able to do this. Where it starts to get really cool is, if you look at what I've done, I've defined a bunch of base values, which you're probably going to have in whatever component that you're building. But I've also defined 3 more computed properties, which only exist to generate this total. I'm not displaying them anywhere. They don't exist for any other reason. I'm not going to access them. And if you've been doing a lot of stuff with computed properties, you probably have run into this situation before where you're basically just creating a chain of computed properties to get some output so that you can not have to have some like really confusing custom computed property. But what composable computed properties allows you to do is something like this. And let's grab this one too. So do that, get rid of this, and you know what, why don't we do our macroception here and get rid of that as well. So our grand total currently is 27.6. Hopefully if I haven't broken anything, that shouldn't change. Yes, so now I've basically taken those 4 lines of code and it's still technically 4 lines of code, but I now don't have all of these computed properties that are just floating around doing nothing because we can use composable macros to basically embed everything together. And I think this is still pretty readable. You can tell that you're going to sum these 2 values, and you're going to take the product of the difference of these 2 values and this value, and then sum them all together to get the total. And I think that's very concise, it's very readable, it's very maintainable, and then you just basically eliminate a lot of the wasted code that you were writing before. So there are a lot more essential add-ons. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just kind of wanted to put them up there as sort of a reminder that you don't have to build everything yourself when you're building your Ember app. There is a lot out there. I've already mentioned a bunch of these. A few that I wanted to call out really quick is Ember Intel is a fantastic add-on for internationalization. Ember Power Select is a new select add-on that's built completely Ember first, so it's similar to what you might get from like Select 2 or Chosen you might have heard of before, but Ember Power Select is completely built with Ember. It doesn't use any third-party libraries, so there's none of that black hole instance where you get with like a wrapper around a third-party library where you kind of put data in and then this like jQuery plugin or whatever kind of takes over and Ember loses context on what's happening. And a lot of times you run into situations where a third-party library can't really update the data as easily because it doesn't take advantage of the data down actions up paradigm that Ember has. And so something like Ember Power Select can do that beautifully. It's a very new project, but it's looking great so far, and I really love it. I just wanted to talk briefly about a few other resources you can use to go find out about Ember add-ons or how to build Ember apps, or just really anything that you want to use to learn about Ember. So Ember Observer and Ember add-ons are 2 great websites that catalog add-ons that have been published to NPM. Ember add-ons is a great way to quickly search add-ons and to it allows you to sort by the most recently updated, so you can figure out which add-ons are being updated frequently, and also you can keep an eye on which add-ons have just been published, because if it's been published for the first time within the last week, it'll be marked with a new tag, so that's a great way to kind of discover new stuff. Ember Observer doesn't have that functionality, but it does do a more in-depth look at each individual add-on. They actually will sort the add-ons by category, so you can look at like component add-ons or add-ons that affect the build process or add-ons that affect like styles and different things like that. And then they'll actually score the add-ons for you so that you can sort of get an idea on a scale of 1 to 10, like how mature this add-on is. Does it have tests? Does it have a passing build? Is it just one person maintaining it, or is there like a team of people contributing so that you can kind of trust that this project's going to keep going for a while? So Ember Observer is what I use to sort through the 1,500 add-ons that exist today. It took me about 2 weeks to go through every single add-on that exists. I don't recommend it. So that's kind of why I ended up building Ember CLI Opinionated, because I don't want you to have to spend 2 weeks, and I'm sure your bosses don't want you to spend 2 weeks just trying to figure out what's out there. Ember Weekly, Ember Weekend are some recurring newsletters and podcast sites where you can get information about the latest news in the Ember world, or new add-on releases, or articles that people have written. Ember Flare and Ember Watch are great sites where people post their own blog posts that they've written, or post tutorials or cookbooks. So I would definitely check out all of these if you're looking to get more involved and find out what's out there in the Ember community. That's pretty much all I had. You can get these slides online, so I'll leave this up for a bit. And just to my quick 5-second plug is if you do need some help getting an Ember app up and running, or if you have one already and you're looking for someone with a few years Ember experience, I am available, so come talk to me afterwards. Any questions? Just one in the back.
There's another Ember resource out there called Ember Up. Maybe you guys have heard of it. Has anyone heard of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Ember Up is awesome.
It's artisanally curated by these three gentlemen
Yes.
in this corner here. And I think it's pretty great.
Yeah, Ben, if you had posted something in the last couple weeks, maybe I'd put you in my slides.
He's been on vacation.
No, but seriously, Ember Up is awesome, and you guys should check it out. Yeah, vacation. Psh.
I also wanted to mention something about the Ember computed property macros. So you may notice in your templates, for instance, you have sub-expressions or nested helpers, you might know them. And you might think, okay, well, we have it there, like why? And those, you can define those by using helpers. And then you're thinking, why is this ember.computed thing so different from helpers? When really they're solving the exact same problem. So with some new Glimmer stuff that I hope will land in a couple months or so, I would hope to unify these two paths so that you don't have to be writing a helper and this computed macro. You can just do it in one place, and it will work, and it will just sort of support composability out of the box. And hopefully we won't need these add-ons anymore, but I'm glad that they do exist because I use them now.
Yeah, if you're not really that familiar with what's coming in Ember, there's a lot of stuff coming in the next 3 to 6 months that's going to be really awesome, and it's going to alleviate a lot of pain points that add-ons today exist to try and fix. So that was a great example, but there's a lot like that coming down the pipeline, so get excited.
So 2 questions. The first one is relating to Ember responsive, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so you may have covered this. I apologize if I spaced out. So what happens if the user resizes the browser kind of mid request or mid, while they're in a session on your Ember app?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, so Ember responsive essentially takes the height and width, right, of the canvas, the browser canvas.
Yeah.
So what happens when the user resizes their browser, kind of midway through that request happening?
I mean, that if you look back at, I mean, I can go back, but if you look at how when I demonstrated it, it was pretty much fluid update of the value, like as you go.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my mistake. I spaced.
Yeah, no worries.
Second question, kind of relating to that, the Ember responsive, and just kind of all the other things that you talked about. What kind of performance impact do they have on the client? And I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit to that point.
I mean, every add-on is going to have a performance impact, but I think, first off, if you've been using Ember for a while, performance has been a pain point, and I don't think add-ons have necessarily been the bottleneck. Obviously, a lot of work's being done on the framework level to really make that a lot better. I think you have to evaluate each add-on, each third-party library that you bring into your app individually to see if it's going to be a big performance hit on what you're doing. But I think if you're building a large, ambitious, complex web application, a lot of the things that I'm recommending are problems that you're going to have to solve in every single application you build. And so there are going to be performance hits, but you just have to figure out like what's the solution that works best for you and for your team. And if it's the choice between bringing in some like random third-party jQuery library or bringing in some add-on that kind of does it the Ember way and can take advantage of a lot of the Ember performance improvements down the line, to me, that I think the choice is clear. Anything else? Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.